everyone, I'm Els and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I've delayed this video until the last moment possible. It is literally the evening of New Year's Eve when I'm making this video, whereas I should have done it days ago, like most people did, but I was very overwhelmed with the amount of books I read and found it very difficult to decide on a top 10. There are a million honourable mentions at the start because it was so difficult to choose. But yeah, here is my video on my top 10 books of 2021. Oh, by the way, the reason why it was so difficult to choose between was because I read 256 books this year, which is a lot. It's a very big reading year for me. My first sort of normal-ish reading year for me that I've recorded, because last year was the first one that I ever recorded and I read slightly less than usual because, you know, affected by a global pandemic. So this year I read more. Last year I read around 185-ish. This year 256. So who knows? Maybe I'll stop reading as much next year. Knowing me, probably not, because I love reading. Anyway, I'm talking too much. Video-ness. I just realised there are more honourable mentions than actual books on the list. So, I don't know, I'm gonna have to do timestamps because this may be a long video. I don't know, I'll try and speed through them as quickly as I can. I've organised them into categories. So, this one is the retelling / fairy tale inspired honourable mentions. The first one on this list is Ramesa by Radia Hafiza. It's a retelling of a bunch of fairy tales all pulled together by an alternate version of Rapunzel, as she escapes her tower, makes friends and helps other people along the way. And I just think it's really cute, adorable, heartwarming middle grade, a little bit of feminism in there, little bit of diversity added to the traditional fairy tales because they are usually grounded in very Eurocentric sort of backdrops, and I like that they switched it up a little here so it's more inclusive. And I just enjoyed it. It was a lovable story. I really liked the friendships. And it's quite short, actually. Not for a middle grade, but it's just a fun read. My second honourable mention is Dracula's Guest by Michael Sims. And it's a collection of short stories and tales and configurations of the idea of the vampire, up until the point wherein Dracula was created, and it goes back to John Polidori's The Vampire and references lots of different little snippets of different vampire stories. And as the title suggests, it also includes the deleted chapter from Dracula called Dracula's Guest. I just really loved this book. It was really fun, really interesting. If someone else is also really into vampires and the sort of Byron-esque Dracula kind of figure of a vampire, I'd really recommend this to you because this is the kind of era of vampires that I really, really love. And I wish we'd see more of this. Like, if I was a writer, I would write about this kind of vampire. The next book on here is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, which I listened to via audiobook, which I really, really enjoyed. I loved the sort of idea of magic and the slightly sci-fi elements mixed in, even though it is definitely more fantasy and unrealistic. I do like the little snippets. It's about the royal princess of a sort of kingdom And the main form of magic there is to do with bone shards, and they're put together to create these different creatures that fulfill different purposes. And the princess finds out more and more about herself because she has a loss of some of her memory from the past, and I just love what happens. I am so tempted to spoil what she finds out about herself, but I will not. There is also a sequel coming out this next year, I'm pretty sure, which is super exciting, so I want to read that too. The next honourable mention on here is a series, and it's the Cruel Prince series by Holly Black, which takes place in a sort of version of fairyland. I believe they actually do call it fairyland in this. And there is a mischievous prince who has a tail. There's a lot of drama, particularly on TikTok, and memes around Cardan's tail. I don't know why, it's just funny. And the story of a human who gets swept away to fairyland, and it's likened to the Beauty and the Beast style retelling as well, so that's quite fun, except it's with fairies, and that's very popular now within the YA sort of area. I think particularly after the popularity of the Sarah J Maas sort of books, but I actually prefer this one, probably because it's less sexual, and I prefer not to have that kind of content in my books. So if you want something that has fairies in it but is not very sexual, then go for that one. Els recommends. Next one on here is unfinished. It is the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. I've read the first 3 out of the 5, so I haven't finished it, but I am like a substantial enough portion through to talk about it in this video. It follows a main character called Percy Jackson, who is a demigod, and once he finds out, oh my goodness, my father is a god from the Hellenic pantheon, he is sent off to a place called Camp Half-Blood, where other demigods are brought up as tweens, teens, and they grow up there because it is not safe for them outside in the normal world, and they face different adventures, Percy and his friends that he meets at camp and elsewhere, and face lots of different creatures from Greek mythology, and I think it's really cool, really interesting. And once I finish this one, I definitely want to try and read some of the other series that Rick Riordan has, because he has expanded not only outside the Greek and Roman pantheons, but I think he's started a Norse one and an Egyptian one, which I find super interesting. I love mythology, so I really enjoyed it, and I'm surprised that I didn't read it when I was younger, because it was very much advertised when I was younger. I just never read it for some reason. Anyway, I'm reading it now and I'm loving it. Now on to science fiction honourable mentions. Woo! The first one I've got here is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and it's a revenge story about a character who takes revenge on the people in power for their mistreatment of the working class. In this version though, it's not necessarily based in a country, it is based across the solar system, and they're all assigned to different planets and have different colours, and based on the colours you're assigned your position within society, and red is the lowest one, which our main character is a part of, but he pretends, as part of a revolution, to be part of gold, I'm pretty sure, which is the highest class, and he joins a sort of competition in order to gain power and then secretly betray the rich people. And I know it's a long series, but I've not gotten on to the second book yet. I mean, I probably will eventually. It was a fun ride, this one, so. The next book on here is Rise and Shine by Patrick Arlington, which is a science fiction story about an alternate version of our reality wherein war footage is played every morning at the breakfast table to all of the citizens in this country and with another country that they are having a war with, and all of the battle scenes are streamed out each morning to the different people who are living there. And it explores the implications of that. I found it quite interesting, especially because I read it just before finishing my A-levels, and there was some sort of World War One sort of mindset things going on about prolonging wars and different thoughts along that kind of line. So I found it pretty interesting, to be fair, but I really like dystopian books and I don't think they're the most popular, so I don't know. The next book on here is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab, and I put this one on the sci-fi list because it deals with alternate dimensions, particularly different versions of London, and the main character can travel in between them until some things get misplaced in other versions and things start to go wrong, and it just goes on some kind of magical adventure, and it will be nice to continue the series. It's my first ever book I've ever read by V.E. Schwab, and I know she's a very, very beloved author, and I'd really love to read more of her stuff because I thought it was really interesting. Now, onto contemporary recommendations / honourable mentions. Woo! The first book on this section is Honey and Issue's Guide to Fate Dating by Adiva Jagdar. This is a very sweet sapphic story about two girls who pretend to be dating and then they fall in love, or do they? Drama. I just love stories where they take an overplayed trope and then they just make it gay. Because in a sense you'd think it's an original cliche, and the funny thing is it's not, because these things are only just being done now. But it was just very sweet and wholesome, and the reason why I read this was because the author had previously written a story that I really enjoyed called The Henna Wars that I read last year, or is it year before last, now that it's nearly the end of the year? I don't know, but this is just a really good wholesome read that I suggest. Last book on the honourable mentions is Gossip Girl by Cecily von Ziegler, and this is on this list purely for nostalgia because I really, really enjoyed the Gossip Girl series when I was 12, absolutely loved it. Blair Waldorf is a fashion icon. She's the reason why I love headbands. And also the formatting of this reminded me of the Monster High books that I used to read around the same time as that. So for the nostalgia, this book was perfect for me. And I don't know, maybe at some point in the holidays one year I should read the whole series because it seems right up my alley for things to sort of, I want to reach back into my childhood nostalgia and reconnect with who I was back then. And now, finally, onto my top 10 books of the year. At number 10, we have The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. I actually listened to this one via audiobook and I loved it. It features so many special different twists on different stories, and if you know me, you know that my favourite show ever is Once Upon a Time, and that does a similar thing with intertwining different stories and fairy tales. This one intertwines different characters set in Victorian England, so Frankenstein, for example, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and the generation below them, and as it follows the daughter of Dr. Jekyll as she tries to solve a mystery and meets quite a few other characters from a few other stories, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. Now, bear in mind, I do have physical copies of quite a lot of these, including this one here, but because they're all at uni, I won't have them all to hold up. So this is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, which follows a group of Shakespeare-oriented theatre kids and what happens when the roles are kind of switched up, and there's also like a little bit of a murder mystery, but you don't really know who is like going to die and who is the murderer person, and it's complicated, and there are lots of Shakespeare references, so if you're a Shakespeare nerd like me, it's fun. It is fun. This one I also left at uni, but it's The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. Look at this quirky thing. None of the pictures of the cover are the same on Google Images, so I just chose one that was colourful. But basically, this follows a man called Quasimodo, who is the bell ringer in Notre Dame in Paris, and by the name he is a hunchback, and because of this disability he is treated badly by his adoptive father, Frollo, who is the bad guy because he is a mean person and he kills people and wants people dead, and basically, Quasimodo falls in love with this gypsy called Esmeralda, but also this soldier dude falls in love with Esmeralda. Esmeralda is getting all the guys because she is incredible, we love her. And then she's accused of witchcraft by Frollo because he also likes her, and he's like, no, I'm a religious cool dude, bro. I cannot be in love with her, and she's a gypsy, and I'm racist. So he's like, that must mean that she's a witch, we must burn her at the stake. And it's very emotional. Yeah, but I love it because it's over dramatic and it's fun, and there is a musical about it, and a Disney musical about it as well, and a Disney cartoon film about it. Basically, what Les Mis is to most theatre kids, The Hunchback of Notre Dame is to me. And I've spent too much time talking about this book. Anyways, next book. Next one on here is The Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. I've already forgotten what number I'm on. I should check that. This is my number 7. Basically, fan family. There are six friends, and they form a sort of group of kind of criminals, but they still have my heart, and like everyone else's, especially now that there's a series that come out based on the Grishaverse, which is the world that Leigh Bardugo creates, and some of the characters from this duology are in that. And a goat, which is also fun. So in this one, they perform an elaborate, seemingly impossible heist, and this one follows them after they sort of try and get their getaway, and I actually preferred this one, even though most people don't, because it was sad. But I will not say why, and I can't say much about this one without spoiling the first one, so anyways, I recommend it. Now I have Cinderella's Dead by Kaylin Bayron for my number 6 read of the year. It is sort of a dystopian telling of Cinderella, if that makes sense. It takes place 200 years after the event of Cinderella, and the story is sort of told religiously, literally, and it builds up the idea of the significance of royalty and the importance of this ball, and how women must find men to marry in this annual ball, otherwise they will be alone forever, apparently. But here's the thing, this main character, she doesn't like men, and this society is kind of like heteronormative, which is fairly reflective of our own. So yeah, she starts to uncover why this tradition came about, starts to find out the truth about the story, and maybe falls in love with a character that I also end up having a crush on as well. Now we're on to my top 5 books, and most of them will be at uni because they're my top 5. Now, at number 5 we have Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth, and I literally finished this like yesterday. So if that's not great last minute reads of the year, I don't know what is. Veronica Roth wrote the Divergent series, I'm pretty sure, when I was younger, and oh my goodness, her style came back and I love it. Basically, this follows the supposed Chosen Ones after a previous Dark One is defeated, and follows them and their adventures, and I don't know, maybe something comes up. Maybe they have to fight something else. Who knows? Maybe... I need to stop saying maybe, otherwise I'm gonna spoil something. But anyway, I really enjoyed this. This one on here is my only graphic novel one on this list, which is strange. I should have put graphic novels in the honourable mentions. Never mind, I will do it after this book recommendation. This is Heartstopper by Alice Osman, and it's a really, really adorable story about 2 boys who fall in love, and I really love the bisexual representation in there of Nick, which is really nice. I do love positive representation of bisexuals, and I believe there's also a Netflix adaptation coming out of multiple casts of characters in this. I also absolutely love the side characters. It's very heartwarming, very loving. Of course, as with all of these books, trigger warnings, look them up before you read them, because there are some quite emotional topics spoken about. It's all dealt with sensitively, but you know, emotions. Now to dive into my Webtoon to give you recommendations for other Webtoon things that I also loved as much as Heartstopper. Okay, this one is my favourite, full stop, favourite ever series here on Webtoon, and it's called Down to Earth, and it's about this alien girl who comes down to Earth and is found by this one guy who's very sweet. He lets her in and is like, it's okay, I can help you figure out what's going on. And they start a really cute friendship, and I don't know, they might end up liking each other, maybe. And it's just one of those things where they both make each other better, because she helps him to become more confident in himself, and he helps her to become more accustomed to Earth and to make friends and so on. So they're both helping each other come out of their shells, and it's really sweet. And those are my favourite kinds of relationships, where they both make the other person better without meaning to or without doing anything at all. It just... basically, Jane Austen was right. Anyways, next one. Another one that I really recommend is called Plague Muffins by Erin Kirkland, which is about a story about a plague doctor who cures people with muffins that have a magical cure in them, and he's very generous, and he starts to have this apprentice, and I just think it's really wholesome and cute. This one is wholesome off the charts. It's Safi the One-Eyed Cat, and it's a story about Safi and her 2 other cats that she lives with, and their different personalities, and they get into lots of cute scenarios, and I just think it's adorable. So yeah, that was my mini Webtoon thing tangent that I went off of. Anyway, back to the actual top 10. Number 3 on my list is A Place Called Perfect by Helena Duggan. This is a middle grade about a girl who moves to a new town called Perfect with her parents, where things are not quite as perfect as they appear. Something strange is that everyone in the town loses their sight and has to wear glasses. That's something about... They also have like this tea that they all drink all the time. I don't want to expose anything, but she meets this friend and she's cool and rebelling against the evil town leaders and magicalness. That probably makes no sense, but I absolutely love it. It's a really cute middle grade, and honestly, there are so many amazing middle grades out there, and this is one that I personally love. The next one on here is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. That's my number 2. And this has affected me so badly that I'm too scared to read the second book. Every time I pick it up, I'm like, no, what if it's not the same? Because the first book to me was perfect. It was amazing. There was a revolution, there was a cool magic system, it involved the ingesting of metal, and different metals correspond to different magical sort of things. Of course, there was a mentor to the main character that helped them build and grow, and there is a love interest who likes her more than him, in my mind at least, and he reads books and his name begins with an E, which is my favourite letter. Why am I so random? But yeah, definitely book boyfriend material right there. Or do I want to be him? We will never know with these things. Maybe I do. Do I just want to be a rich boy? Maybe. But in a fantasy world with magic. This makes no sense, but anyway, I love the book. It's a great fun fantasy, and I will eventually get there and be able to read the rest of the Mistborn series. And finally, my number 1 read of the whole entire year was the Spellslinger series by Sebastian de Castell, which we'll not focus on. There we go, there it is. That's my favourite thing that I read this year. It's a series about this guy who starts to lose his magic because it's some curse or whatever. And there's like this rivalry between the people who have magic and don't have magic, and the people that don't have magic want revenge on the people who do have magic because they're underappreciated because they don't have magic, and there's this huge plot. And also there's this cool lady who comes along and is like, you know what, I have cool hippie vibes and I have cool cards that I make and collect. And there's also a talking squirrel cat that's like, hey, I'm too cool for you. I am very sassy and I am the best character ever. And basically it follows those three through the whole rivalry thing in the first book, and then follows them on their travels later after that book, throughout all the different kingdoms. And the main character picks up some of the cool hippie stuff that the lady teaches, and the squirrel cat remains my favourite character in existence. He is my comfort character, and yes, it's a talking animal sidekick, but I love talking animal sidekicks. I think they're the best. So there you have it. A million recommendations on top of my top 10 reads of 2021, literally on last minute possible, because I'm about to go out for New Year's Eve things and I have like 5 minutes to edit this before I go, so if it's edited poorly, that is why. Anyway, love you guys lots, or do I? You're strangers. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll hopefully see you again for another video soon. Bye!